Sara Webb opened InTandem Promotions in 2013, and many of you know Sara. She's absolutely one of the most positive people I have ever met. And her journey from salesperson to CEO has been exactly that. And I'm not going to labor the introduction because I'd rather Sara speak instead of me. Sara Webb, welcome to the stage.
Hey guys. I hope you all had a great lunch. Thank you, Bobby, for the introduction. Even hearing the word CEO after my name blows my mind. You see, I never intended to be a CEO, and if you go back even further, I didn't intend to be a salesperson either. My father was the epitome of a used car salesperson. So think of that image in your mind. That was my dad. And my mother was an elementary school teacher. So my mother was always trying to put food on the table, and my father was always chasing, not making, that elusive dollar. So sales in my mind, growing up, was not something that I wanted to do or even be a part of. So fast forward, I'm in college, and I'm getting my degree in both marketing and finance. And I love it. I love how the numbers and the creativity and all aspects of it are completely intertwined. I landed my first job as a project manager. And this was during the .com era where we actually had server rooms. Do you guys, anybody remember this? So it was this freezing room, for those of you who don't remember, and we would actually hardwire the lines from the servers into each one of the different computer places where you plug in your computers. So in this role, I had to learn about managing projects and time management and learning and understanding my clients and what their needs were. And so I'm in this role and I'm trying to figure all of this out, and I'm still going to school. And the .com bubble burst. And so here I was working full-time, going to school full-time. My fiance at the time had, well, he became my husband, it wasn't at the time. So he was still going to school, and I was paying for both of us to get through school because we were trying to graduate without having any additional student loan debt. We had just put money down to build a house, and I was paying for my wedding, and I was out of a job. So, you know in Scarlett O'Hara from Gone with the Wind, where she's like clawing out the door, "As God is my witness, I'll never go hungry again." That was me. I'm a little bit Southern, so that's a perfect reference for me. This was at a time where you faxed your resume, so I literally faxed my resume to 1,000 different companies, and I received one single callback. One. So talk about pressure and intensity in that moment with that interview. So I went in for the interview, and they hired me. It was obviously my effervescent personality, and I received the job, and thus my entrance into the promotional products world began, and I loved it. I learned about imprint methods and products and all of the different nuances of this industry. I did research on four-color process and what deboss and emboss and what the heck, why are you naming all the things the same? And I learned about direct mail campaigns and custom products and overseas. And again, this is in the heyday of the fax machine and when we would overnight camera-ready artwork. It was crazy. My first time to Dallas, for all of you youngins or new to the industry, that was before Las Vegas. I literally cried, like tears of joy from a wedding, cried when I got to see all of the different opportunities that they had before us. I built a multi-million-dollar business from my start as an assistant. I had the best training and education. I worked with some and had the best mentors in this industry. And I had a great foundation from my education and learning about profit loss and margins and how to figure out my commission. But no, I was not going to become a salesperson. Instead, I did become a sales professional, and there is a difference. I discovered that I loved connecting with my clients and understanding what their actual needs were. and asking the questions and finding solutions and figuring out ways that I could help them and take things to the next step. I love the highs and the lows and the chaos and the challenges that this industry has to offer. Which leads me to my first piece of wisdom: bloom where you are planted. So every spring, my children bring to me hydrangeas and roses and gardenias from our garden. And we put them in mason jars. That's what we do in the South. Everything gets put in a mason jar: drinks, nails, flowers. And so that we put them in mason jars, and they put them all over my house. And then I become meme mommy a few days later because I'm throwing away their flowers. And the reason is because they're dead, and I don't want the mold and the mildew and all of that all over my house. But the reason why they've died is because they're not connected to the vine. There's no roots, there's nothing that is holding them, they're not thriving, they're not soaking up the nutrients. So many times we are on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. In this world of social media where you're scrolling through and you're seeing everyone's individual accomplishments, you want that for yourself. And so you're in this constant race that messes with your brain about, oh, I should be doing more, I need to be going out there. And there's nothing wrong with the hustle, but also take the moment to enjoy where you are and the stage that you are and learn and grow from that. When I started as a project manager, as I mentioned years ago, the skill set that I learned enabled me to build the foundation to become an assistant account executive. And then from there, I was promoted throughout that organization during the time that I was there. And each time I layered my experience and my learnings so that when I was ready, I was able to grow into the next stage. The sandbox in my first role enabled me to be wildly successful in my next. So Sophia Amoroso, CEO of Nasty Gal, I love. So she said, when you approach everything as if it's a big, fun experiment, then it's not that big of a deal if things don't work out. If the plan changes, it can be even better. There are secret opportunities hidden inside every failure. I love this. But what she goes on to say is that all her diversity of experience that she received in the beginning stages enabled her to be wildly successful at Nasty Girl. She wanted a chutes and ladders experience with all ladders and no chutes. She goes on to say, that, my friends, simply does not exist. Life is about the ladders and the chutes. I love what she's saying here because it often reminds me of all of those times where we go through these highs and these lows of these industries, of this industry. One of the things that I joke about with my peers is that I'll come into work and I'm like, I am the best salesperson ever. And then in 5 minutes I get the call. This order hasn't shipped, or the imprint's wrong, or I've ordered the wrong thing. So it's the highs and the lows that build you into the success that you are. Bill George, author of True North, said, regardless of where you are in your organization, at the top, just getting started or looking for a new challenge, every leadership experience you have will enable you to grow and discover your authentic leadership. Bloom where you're planted. Life is about the chutes and the ladders. I was in a leadership class and earlier this year, and one of the things that they mentioned was about back pocket experiences. And something in that visual helps me. A lot of times we come to these events and you start, at least I do, maybe this is just me, so y'all tell me if this is just me, but I start stressing out because I'm like, oh, I want to do this, and I come back and I want to implement all of these changes, just like what Jay was talking about earlier today. And so with back pocket experiences, you take all of these lessons and learnings and you can put them away for when you're ready to take them back out. And that's helped me kind of ground myself. So this brings me to my next point, which is you must lean into tension. Fear can be absolutely debilitating. There are many times, like right before I came out here, where I just want to suck my fingers, rub my baba, curl into a little ball, and go to sleep. Fear is imagination with no direction, and faith is belief with direction. And that's really the key. There was this moment in my career where I was completely petrified to move into the role of a CEO. And and the voices in my head were louder than anything that I could have ever imagined. I would have these thoughts of, who do you think you are? You have not been trained. You have no skills. What are you doing? You're going to lead a team. You're going to grow a company. You're responsible for all of these people. All of the stories that we all play in our own heads over and over again. Do not allow the voices to win. Fear is imagination without direction. David Goggins spoke at PPAI Las Vegas, and he said, our whole life is set up for the path of least resistance. I love this. We don't want to suffer, we don't want to feel pain, we don't want to feel discomfort, so the whole time we're living our lives in this very comfortable area, and there's no growth in that. I started as an assistant, and I layered the experience with every title change, and when I was offered the position of a commissioned account executive, it took me a week to make this decision. You see, I, at this point, was in a very comfortable place in my life. My husband and I now had full-time careers. We have a mortgage. We're responsible adults. And the thought of becoming a commissioned account executive and leaning into that fear was absolutely debilitating. You start out every month making $0. $0 every month. I mean, talk about a really smart career move for me. But I leaned in. I took one step and then another, and I did start with a really, really low base, just to be clear. But I continued to layer myself up one step in front of the other. And then I came to another crossroads in my career where I needed to make the decision to become a CEO. And although I leaned directly into that in this new role, the voices were loud, and the transition from being a sales professional to a CEO, I made so many incorrect assumptions. Like, I thought you could continue to sell and I could run my account base and be a CEO, that they would still somehow be, wait for it, work in tandem. Do you see? I think I'm funny. But that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. And so I would work these ridiculously long hours. We all hear the memes about out-hustle the competition and just work and grit and strong and go, go, go. So I did. I did it at the expense of my family, my personal life. My dog did not know who I was. I'd come home and he'd start growling at me. I mean, it was a little bit crazy. And I was working myself round and round. I was beyond exhausted. InTandem was 4, and I was failing. And I did not know what I was going to do next. I realized that I was managing and not leading. Just like David Goggins said, it was very easy for me to go back to my comfort zone, which was to be an assistant. I am an amazing assistant, y'all. I can call on orders like nobody's business. I promise you I can outcall you on your orders. I knew where everything was. I knew where the quotes were. I was the best assistant. So if you were falling behind, I could totally pick you up and do your job for you. But I was managing, not leading, because it was scary. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no training. I had no education. I had no foundation. I had no idea what I was doing, and these people were depending on me. I couldn't understand how the sheer grittiness of how I built my business was not translating into becoming a CEO. So all of this was happening, and one of the lessons that I had to learn is that business is both professional and personal. I kept thinking that I could put my life in these little boxes and compartmentalize everything, and somehow, some way, I would make it all right. I'm a type A, I'm a first child, so everything has to be nice and pretty in these little areas for me. So I thought that if I would work from 8 until 5, I could be home with the kids from 6 until 9, and then from 9:30 until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I could just keep working. And I literally did that for years. So like I said, I was a little bit delusional by the time the 4 years hit. What I had to find was incorporating both, that life is about business and professional. So what that looks like to me in my life is that I have 2 daughters. They play soccer, and on the weekends, there's normally games on Saturdays and Sundays. So in between games, we'll go to a game, and then we bring them back to my office. I set them up on the big screen TV in the conference room. They get their break, and then I knock out a few things. It's the 2% rule that Jay was mentioning earlier, making these small incremental changes to help adjust your day. I found that by working on this presentation, I did it in the morning before the girls were awake. At school, what I'll do is I take off a day at work, and I'll work in the media center in the itty-bitty desk, and I'll take care of a few quotes, and then I'll take my kid to lunch, and we'll have a lunch date. I also run the PTA Spirit Wear program, Go Wolves. I mean, it's pretty awesome. But what's cool about that is that my daughter is involved fully in that program. She does the videos, she does the social media, she picks the product, and we have a whole conversation. So when mommy's not here or there at the house and I'm here, she knows what I'm doing. She has a sense. But I've had to figure out ways to incorporate both my business and my personal life. Once I figured this out, I had to then define my day. And you guys, I'm not going to stand before you and tell you that I have everything figured out, because I obviously don't. This is something that I learned this year, and I'm 6 years into InTandem. It's taken me 20 years. This October, I'll be in this business for 20 years. So I started when I was 12. And so it has taken me a while to figure this out. But what I will share with you is that it takes dedication and commitment. It's the 2% changes. None of this is things that you don't already know, but what I would implore you to do if you're not currently, to actually do it and learn from a lot of the mistakes that I have learned. So I used to try and work out in the evenings, 5:30, 6 o'clock. And in working out at that time, I was trying to leave the office, and everybody wants you at that time. Like, as soon as you put your bag on and you close your computer, they're like, oh, I waited all day to tell you this one thing. And so I was never actually getting out of the office. And so what I found that works for me is that I get up at 4:45. I get in the car at 5, and then I'm at the gym at 5:15. I work out from 5:15 to 6:15 in a class. I pay monthly for it, and I have to sign up for the class a week in advance. At 5:15 in the morning, nobody wants to talk to you. You're nobody's mother, boss, child, wife, husband, friend. Nobody wants to talk to you. They don't even care to see your face. And so it's great because I can actually get in there and take care of something that I need personally to help reduce the stress in my life. From there, I go home. I make sure that the kids are actually awake and moving. And then, wait for it, I meditate. I know, you guys. So totally hippie, and I get it. And I didn't believe it. This year I attended Tony Robbins' UPW class, and when I attended this class, he goes through the methodology. So I recommend you to Google it and see what works for you personally. I thought that meditation was what weird people do, or, like I said, hippies. Have any of you watched that movie Eat, Pray, Love with Julia Roberts? Yeah, okay, so when she's in India, there's this moment where she's going to meditate, and she looks at the clock and it says 7:59. And so she's sitting there and she's like, And so she's going through, well, like anybody, all of these ideas and thoughts are going through my head. You know, this is boring. Why is the fan going? I need to get this quote out. What is happening? Oh my gosh. And then she looks over and the clock just turned to 8 o'clock. And she's like, oh. So that's what meditation was to me. And in Tony Robbins and UPW, what he does is he walks you through a process. And for this, again, type A personality, this is what works for me. I start out and I think about, and I have to have numbers because, again, I need my compartments. So I have 4 things that I have to be grateful for. So if I have a lot of rush quotes that I need to take care of, I'm grateful for my rush quotes. I'm grateful for my clients. I'm grateful for the opportunities that I've been presented with. I'm grateful for my team, even though they make me crazy and I make them crazy. From there, after being grateful, I think through 4 things that I have accomplished 4 things that I'm proud of, whether it's something that my children have done or that I personally have done. And then from there, I think about 4 things that I will make happen. Standing before all of you and you clapping your hands wildly at my amazing speech. But all of that lends itself into setting myself and my framework up for a day where I can be successful and manage the multiple stresses that hit all of us. Bill George says that it doesn't matter what your routine is, but however you establish your routine and your framework is super important, especially in times of stress where we all get distracted. And this business is so intense and so chaotic that without having these ways to settle your framework in your mind, it becomes very challenging. So the next thing, once I have defined my day, is branching out, possibly? Yes, branching out. So in proximity is power, and in branching out, I have learned that in networking and coming to events like this, and I don't really need to tell you guys this because y'all are here, you're meeting and mingling and brainstorming and connecting and building upon each other and one another. But by going to events like this, it enables me to continue to level up. So who is challenging you? Who are you spending your time with? Who are you with that is going to make you better? Getting out of the office and fully immersing in these different events will absolutely propel you to the next level. John Maxwell calls this the law of intentionality, being intentional about your personal growth and your personal strength to ensure that you continue to grow, and leaders need that in order to continue to level up. Once I've seen my different blind spots, the next thing I do is hire a coach. And I didn't even know that this was a thing. I mean, I knew that there were certain coaches but there's like a whole industry of just coaches to be coaches, like coaching all sorts of crazy stuff. So is Hope here? Can I tell your story real quick? Okay, so I met Hope in line yesterday, and it was so cool that we had this conversation. It was definitely fate. So she does Ironman events, which is impressive in and of itself, but she travels a lot. And in her doing the Ironman challenges, she has to have a coach to provide her with the training schedule to handle the intensity of this. I think for so long I had in my head that it was a weakness to hire somebody to help me, that it was a weakness to ask for the help that I needed or to figure out how to do this. I thought that it was all on me and on my shoulders to make all of these changes and make this happen. But just like Hope, in hiring a coach, I'm able to do things a lot faster. For her to do all of the research and do the Google, did you hear I just said that? To do the Google, it would have taken her weeks to figure out and plot out her training schedule, what she learned in a couple of days. So every year I take on one new personal skill. This is like my mission or my New Year's resolution. And 3 years ago, I took on learning golf. So I would go to all of these golf tournaments, and I'd set up at a hole, and we'd be a hole sponsor, and I'd have my little table, and people would come through. And for the tournaments, at least that I was presenting in, all of them were men. And I'm watching this, and I'm watching this, and I do this for years. And then the paradigm finally shifted. I mean, sometimes it takes me a minute. And I realized that all the decisions were happening on the golf course. Why was I so intimidated to go out there? So I hired a coach. They taught me how to play golf. I participated in a number of tournaments, and ladies, there is no line for the bathroom when you're in a golf tournament. It's awesome. So highly recommend you girls to get out there and learn to play golf, because that's really where the decisions were being made. But what's cool about it too is that I have taught my daughters to play golf as well. So again, I'm incorporating both my personal and my professional career. I can play a tournament with executives, which they love, girls hitting off of the girl tees. I mean, I'm only helping them, right? And then my 13-year-old and my 10-year-old are learning the sport as well. This year, my challenge was to learn ballroom dance. So my husband and I'm from the South, can you tell? And so being in the South, we have a lot of what we call galas. So with these gala events, we have to do dances. And so this is my husband and I. like 8th graders. It's a little bit embarrassing. And so I have pulled him into learning how to do ballroom dance. But every year I hire a coach to give me a new skill and a new training, which I recommend. Professionally, I've hired a lot of coaches because, again, I didn't have any of the skill set needed to become a leader. I was a salesperson. And so in my sales team, I had a very young sales team. They were not part of this industry. And so as I'm hiring, I had to teach them how to be a salesperson. In the meantime, I'm still trying to figure out how to be a CEO. And so we've hired lots of coaches to help us along our journey. Throughout my career, as I mentioned, I've held a number of different titles. Your entitlement is only as good as your title. And I felt as though this was an important reminder for me, because as I've had these different title changes, how people treat me has been different throughout that process. I'm still the same person that I was even as an assistant, but my title oh, sorry guys, I don't know what I'm doing. We good? Okay. Oh, let's play clicker. It's a game. So, like I said, in this business, there have been so many acquisitions and people have been acquired, people have been fired and let go. And this is not to make you fearful, but just to keep you mindful of not allowing some of these changes to impact you. I heard a story once that resonated very well with me, and it was about an ambassador. So he held the title of ambassador. He was speaking at an event, and he is flown in on this fancy Learjet. The red carpet unrolls. He has an entourage of people that are carrying his bags. He is whisked away in a limo, brought into his hotel, whisked up to the penthouse suite, and then the next day he's brought down into the limo and he's brought to the event. He sits in a private room right before he speaks. He has a ceramic coffee mug, probably branded, where he's drinking his coffee out of it, and he makes his presentation. 1 year later, he's still the same dude. He just no longer has the title of ambassador. He flies on a commercial jet. He picks his baggage off of the baggage claim like everybody else. He hails a taxi, because that was still a thing, and he goes to the hotel. He has to wait in line to be checked in. He's put into a normal room. The next day, he hails another taxi. He's sitting in a room with everybody else, and he's given a styrofoam coffee mug. He's still the same person. Don't allow your title to inflate your ego, but do allow your dreams to be inflated. When I first started InTandem, we were literally in my house, and we had recently built a new house. My master bedroom was here, and then my office was here. Again, integration, you see how I did that. And so we were out of my house. I had programs in my basement, and my husband was then traveling 2 to 3 weeks out of every month internationally. And he would come home, and there were 3 girls. We'd have the TV on, the music blaring, we're like yip-yapping, brainstorming, collaborating, making things happen, calling on orders, the whole 9 yards. And so my husband obviously didn't get any sleep during this time. We had programs that were down in our basement, and so 2 to 3 times, and I live in the sticks, y'all, like the sticks. The closest UPS is 30 minutes from my house. So several times a day, depending on the rush of the order, I was going down to my basement, packing up my order, and shipping it out, and taking it 30 minutes to Dallas, Georgia, and 30 minutes back. It was crazy. And then we decided to move into our first space. We had a showroom, a conference room. We had offices for each one of the individual salespeople. We had a warehouse where we were able to roller skate in the back, which was pretty fun. It was awesome. And I remember I walked in the first day that we opened up our office, and I thought, this is going to last us 10 years. This is awesome. How did we get so lucky to do this? 3 years later, I had multiple people in different offices. Our showroom that I thought was so amazing was now a storage room. The warehouse was completely full. We were actually having to rent a pod at one point to store everything. And that's to say, the dreams that I had for myself were not as big as they should have been. Now, this doesn't mean to mortgage yourself to the hilt or overextend yourself by any means, but I think my vision was too small. We recently moved into a new office space that is 3 times what our previous office space was, and are currently purchasing land for our next space because we are dreaming bigger this time around. Sophia Amoroso calls this magic, which I love. She says, you get back what you put in, so you might as well think positively, focusing on visualizing what you want instead of getting distracted by what you don't want. Send the universe your good intentions and they'll send them right back to you. We are living in an amazing time, you guys. $24.7 billion industry. Supreme is able to sell a brick for $200, a brick. That's not like a fundraiser for your church and for, paving your kids' parking lot, a brick that has their brand on it. I mean, that's pretty freaking awesome if you ask me. But there's so much speculation and there's so much fear between the tariffs and Amazon and acquisition and product safety testing and so on and so forth. But that's the key. It's all just speculation, right? Be smart, be prepared, but move forward. Do I have any Joanna Gaines fans out there? Love, right? So she says, she's the founder of Magnolia, and she says, I believe there's always something valuable and worth unearthing within inside all of us. I'm not going to pretend it's not scary to dig in, to fight for something within yourself that you may not even have a name for, but that's nothing compared to the aftermath should we choose to not react. Branch out, ask for help, stay humble, be bold. Thank you.
Thank you, Sara. I didn't tell Sara I was going to do this, so I'm throwing her a curveball here. So Mark and I had the privilege of going and sitting with your awesome crew for about an hour and just chatting with them and hanging out this young, incredibly energetic crew.
Okay.
And I'm curious, probably like a lot of folks in the room, Sara has an incredibly positive personality, and we know that this business can be, let's face it, challenging sometimes. So how have you been able to manage that through the years? You've been doing this for now how long?
So 20 in October.
Okay.
But I was 12 when I started.
So how have you learned to manage your equilibrium and just keep that positive energy? And then twofold question, how have you learned to transfer that to your young team that's working for you now?
Well, okay. Thanks, Bobby.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
So I'm a Gemini. Are there any Geminis in the room? Okay. So twins, dual personalities. So my twin, her name is Shaniqua. This is not a joke. This is for real my twin's name. I don't, not a real life twin, but that's the twin in my brain because she's the crazy one. Okay. So I can feel Shaniqua come out and I literally tell her to go away. Y'all, it's all mind games. Everything in life and everything that I've learned is all of these mind games that we play with ourselves. If you can't, you can't. If you say you can, you can. And so, there's a lot of times where when we talked about defining my day, where I've come into the office, my framework is awesome, and then I feel like the door opens and there's a whoosh of all of the stuff that needs to be taken care of, right? The plumbing's out, the order didn't ship, I didn't do this quote, whatever, all of the chaos of this industry. And for me, my mind game is I ball my fist, and then I release it, and then I ball it again, and then I release it, and I say, Shaniqua, it is not your time, go back to your crazy place, and then I put one foot in front of the other. And that's the only way that I physically and mentally have been able to handle the chaos.
There you go. We're all about giving you tactics to take back and put to practice here at skucamp.
Shaniqua.
There you go. About your team.
Oh, my team.
How have you managed to pass this positive energy on over to your team?
Well, and I was sharing to a couple of my friends, one of the things that I learned in the first 4 years where I was a really shitty manager was that I would come up with all of these ideas, like Jay said in the very beginning. And so I'd come in with all these ideas, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And I was constantly throwing things at them. And so what I've had to learn is, even though I have these great ideas and I know what I want to do next, I can't put that pressure out on my team. I have to lead and not manage. And so for me personally, again, I'm a type A personality, so I have everything mapped out on the top 5 things that I want to do this year and then the top 5 things that I want to do next year. And sometimes they rotate in and out. But I found that when I was trying to put too much on my team, that they were going nuts. The other thing that I've had to do is it all comes down to process, process, process. So much of what I had to build was in my brain. I knew how to be a great assistant. I was a great salesperson. And all of it was in my brain. And, you know, as I shared with you and Mark when you came, everything was in PowerPoints. I'm old. So everything was in PowerPoints. And I would know all of the vendors that were in those PowerPoints. So we had like a trade show and apparel and journals and pens. And so I could go through those and I would know by the picture what partner it came from, right? Well, my team didn't. And so we had to really establish a lot of processes so that my team didn't have to feel like they were out there in no man's land. So when I'm on the road and traveling, they know the next process, and that enables them to be confident in their next role.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.